Good evening. I am Shupratik Banerjee, Vice President, TCG Digital, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this evening to our first Thought Edge series event, Revive, Redefine, and Return. The next normal begins. We have two industry stalwarts joining us for a stimulating discussion on the business and financial implications of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially with respect to back-to-work model as we get into phases of unlock. Before we begin, we will try to run a quick poll. A window is going to appear on your screens. We request you to take a moment of your time and feed your response. All right, great. Thank you for feeding in your responses. It appears that almost 78% of you believe that the top priorities as we get back to work are safety and security of employees, regulations and statutory compliance, as well as cyber resilience. Great. So let me now introduce you to your host for the evening, Mr. Sudipto Sen, President of TCG Digital. Sudipto is a very well acclaimed and illustrious industry veteran with over 3.5 decades of rich experience in analytics and IT industry. Prior to joining TCG Digital, he served as partner in McKinsey & Company. Prior to that, he was the CEO, MD, and board member at SAS Institute India, and prior to that, CEO and MD at Comsat Max India. He has been on many international panels as speaker and is recognized as one of the 10 most influential analytics leaders in India. So without further ado, welcome Mr. Sen, and over to you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sudipto Sen. I'm president of TCG Digital. It is my great privilege to accord you a very warm welcome this evening on the session that we are running on this webinar. We call it the TCG Digital Thought Leadership Series, and it is called the Thought Edge. Today, we have picked on a topic which is very relevant, especially when we are starting off post-COVID. How do we revive, redefine, and return to business as the new normal begins? We are very honored and privileged today to have with us Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti. Shailesh, to many of us, needs no introduction. He is an authority in many areas. He's a chartered accountant by profession. He's a chartered accountant, cost accountant, and internal auditor, as well as a certified financial planner and fraud examiner. He is the chairman of L&T Finance Holding Company. Also, he is on the boards of many of the prestigious public limited companies in the country, serving as head of audit committee and so on. He is also an exponential technologies, environmental and social governance, and integrated reporting evangelist. He has authored a couple of books, and I, for one, I have read both of them. One is The Digital Professional, and second is The Audit Renaissance, which he wrote last year, Shailesh, if I remember right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was released last year. Very interesting book. If you guys have not read, please do so. You will find it very useful. Very warm welcome to you, Shailesh. So
Thank you.
As the lockdown unfolds, restrictions are gradually phasing out. Most organizations are contemplating to get back to work, not necessarily with the full force coming to the office, as was the case earlier, because the new norm, which has taught us to work from home, has somehow become a new norm, has somehow become something with which most organizations are probably going to be following through post the opening up of the scenario. But nevertheless, while this challenge has created substantial amount of, uh, I would say, stress in various organizations, let's hear from Sailesh what exactly are the key challenges, as well as what is that as organizations we should really be focusing on in terms of imbibing digital, in terms of imbibing analytics, in terms of looking at the governance and likes of those. So I'll be kind of going through the question answer mode in terms of asking you a few questions.
Sure.
But before I did that, Shailesh, let me kind of cover a few housekeeping issues. So all of you, I know it's indeed a privilege that we have a very uh, exciting presence today in terms of number of people who have logged in. I understand are more than 100 odd. So may I request you not to turn on either your video or audio while we have kept your audio on mute. We encourage you to take part in the poll as and when it happens. And for your questions, there is a question box on your GoToWebinar screen. Please enter your questions, and at the end of the session, we have kept good 10 minutes to pick the brains of Shailesh, as well as your truly would be happy to answer any questions which are pointed at me. And that's about it. So with that, Shailesh, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sudipto. This is a very exciting period. Actually, what happened in the last 3 months is that the whole world got a chance to pause, reconnect, both internally and externally, and then press the accelerate button. That is indeed what I'm finding has been the general way in which people have reacted to this, what has been labeled as a black swan event. The deep realization is that there is no option but to digitalize as far and as deep as you can. In fact, the market cap of the companies which are highly digitalized grew during this terrible period by about 25% and has now reached the staggering figure of 6.4 trillion US dollars. And there I include the likes of Facebook and Amazon and Apple and all the companies that we know have had a huge uptick in their valuations. And one Indian company, which is a digital company, raised close to 20 billion US dollars, the largest amount of money that anybody else in the world raised. But there has also been a huge decimation of people's confidence, of people's hopes, people's jobs, and indeed the aspirations of many who had planned to either go into a comfortable educational mode or a comfortable job or a new challenge. So we've seen the pluses and the minuses. The world has seen a reduction in economic activity and a falling off of GDP of an unprecedented quantum. And it's going to take a while for everybody to recover. But my fond hope is that because of this experience, people are going to come out with leaner, sharper, more stable, more resilient balance sheets. And a case in point that I think struck me through this whole period as truly an outlier is the case of the Mahindras, where they wrote off a whole lot of their intangible assets and committed to doing resource allocation in a most logical, concerted, very careful manner. And that changed the whole structure and the whole feeling about the company. And the share price actually rose post the declaration of the first ever large loss by that company. That is a true indicator of what people are looking for. People are looking for transparency, for resiliency, for safety, for simplicity, for trust. And where all of this can come together is in raising the bars on both financial and integrated reporting and making sure that governance practices become of the highest order that the world has seen. That, I think, is a fantastic base on which we need to build what will happen in the post-COVID world. It's called the PC world.
Wonderful. So I would say welcome to the PC world. Many PCs are given from India. One I can think of is Priyanka Chopra.
Yes, indeed.
But nevertheless, in today's context, uh, the issue which you picked up, that companies who looked at the current scenario as an opportunity to use digital as one of the key driving force is becoming evident globally as well as in India. And I, for one, I fully agree with you, Sailesh, that today's time organizations need to be bold to look at where they are picking on a digital intervention in terms of maybe shaking up the earlier some of the systems, processes, methods, including the way of doing business, probably would become also a new norm, essentially because in the new norm, not only we need to give awesome amount of stickiness to our clients, create scenarios where they come to the organization in a frictionless mode, but also from costing perspective, any cost element which is not adding value. So to say, when I use the word activity based costing, where analytics play a very important role to pull out such line items and so on, needs to be thrown out of the wind. And to give you an example, while surely from B2C scenarios, we have seen great adoption of digital interventions, but even between B2B, digital interventions are becoming a norm. And the organizations who are looking at that, they are the ones who would probably be going ahead. And exactly the examples which you gave, if you saw Mahindra's shooting up in the value chain, is an apt endorsement of what has happened. So to give you an example, if let's say I'm in the B2B and I'm at the end of the chain where probably I was buying my raw material from some of the sales agents who are sitting in between. Now, probably time has come that the organization must have a direct relationship with me, because in order for me to get the raw material, when I'm calling up the intermediaries, half of them are not working, their calls are going unattended, and when it opens up, I know that I have my machinery sitting out there to start manufacturing. But how do I plan? How do I know whether this grade of raw material is available to me? And that's where I believe that organizations who have gone onto the journey of looking at adopting a digital methodology with boldness would remain ahead. And case in point is what you really highlighted. So, may I just ask you one more question, which is with respect to the stress that is going on in quite a few organizations, and you have seen it from very close eyes. In terms of cost optimization, you know, how do you see analytics to be playing a very crucial role at this point in time?
Excellent question, Sudipto, and something that all of us are grappling with. But I want to put a completely different dimension to this. I think we need to start thinking about the expression variabilizing all costs, not activity based costs, no other form of costing, just variabilize every cost. Let me give you an example from the restaurant space. The key costs in a restaurant are the cost of rent and the cost of people. Now, if these costs cannot be related to the value that is being given to the restaurant enterprise by customers, then that cost simply cannot be incurred. Whether it is based on an activity or it is a functional cost or a fixed cost or a variable cost, doesn't matter. So people will have to start rethinking about cost in terms of, if my revenue is 100, how much can I afford of each component of cost? So let's take the rent. How do you variabilize rent, which is normally understood as a fixed cost? So you say that I will be ready to pay rent in terms of a multiple of the number of customers I'm actually able to serve in the premises that I'm renting. And the restaurant business will have to reimagine itself as a business which has leverageable assets in the form of dining tables in your home and my home, which is a
Absolutely.
completely
Absolutely.
out of the box idea, which people have to reimagine their businesses completely. Three other things will be necessary. Those who have resilient balance sheets with no debt will need to look at the opportunities of acquiring the best companies in their business, the best people, and the best IP, which is available in the market. Because this is a time to beef up and become ready for the next black swan event so that you're not caught as unaware as most people were caught this time. The second thing is that people will begin to give huge value to safety, simplicity, and trust. And that's where the B2B idea that you are talking about comes to full play. How do you maintain trust? You can maintain trust only if the components of your enterprise, in terms of cost and other variables which are relevant to your relationship, are shared. And if you can share it in a trusting environment, in a closed loop, then you will be able to do better business, more scaled up business. So the two words that will be critical as watchwords will be scale and innovation. Without these two, the future cannot be resilient for the companies that come out of this stronger than what they were before.
Absolutely. I think scale and resilience are two important words which probably take all the contemporary forward thinking organizations on the right path. Having said that, we also picked up on the issue of safety. So, considering that when we are opening up now, the safety in terms of when people are coming to work may not necessarily in full force. What way you believe, artificial intelligence or machine learning or, you know, such contemporary technologies could be used to make sure that we provide a safe environment, especially to the employees in such industries where significant amount of work from home may not be possible. For instance,
Absolutely.
in the manufacturing setup and likes of those, because that's equally important for us
Absolutely.
as a country to scale up, and not only to scale up, maybe also to play an important role to become a global organization to make use of the opportunity which has come our way, because lot of Western organizations are actually looking at how to address the risk associated with disruption of supply chain.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that being the case, certainly India will come up and play an important role there. But for that to happen, let's take the example of an organization like Mahindra. I personally believe that there's a huge opportunity associated with the automobile component side, for which India has scale. I firmly believe we have opportunity in the pharmaceutical API side because India has scale insofar as pharma generics are concerned, and therefore we do have capability available. But all these industries, when folks are coming back to work, how can we make use of
All of
digital
these.
analytics? And
Absolutely.
so that's the question I
Absolutely.
have.
Super, Sudipta. Again, a critical issue. Let me share what I have learned from two extraordinary manufacturing companies, ACC and Ambuja Cement, which I'm familiar with. So we've got extraordinary SOPs in place. Every person entering into our premises is tested to make sure that the symptoms which should alert us to a potential issue are already available to us. So, temperature testing, making sure that the physical attributes that may point to danger are absent, coming in and giving a short 3-minute briefing on personal hygiene, why a mask must be always on, why gloves must be used, why should there be social distancing. So just as we used to give a safety briefing, we are now wanting to give a hygiene briefing to every person coming in so that people get reacquainted with this. It has become mandatory now for every person entering the premises to be on Arogya Setu so that the contact tracing, if at all a need for that arises, becomes possible. People are not permitted who don't have Arogya Setu on their machines are not allowed to enter. To protect not just themselves, but those others that they may have the potential to put in a non-safe position. So safety has become a critical tool. And artificial intelligence, which you mentioned, is being used to alert automatically people who are even unwittingly going beyond the norms that are prescribed. You can't have less than a, let's say, 6 feet distance. So the moment you get within that parameter, there will be an alert which will alert you to the fact and remind you of your briefing that you had when you entered, that you can't go beyond the norms that have been set up. So while this is, it's going to be a little bit more disciplining required, a little bit more tolerance required, but I think it is important. But even more important than all of this is the willingness of everybody. This morning I was in a town hall with a digital company, and the willingness of this company to bring in ideas of RPA and blockchain and analytics and AI and ML was of a level that I have not seen before. Almost everybody talks this language to the extent that I can now claim that this is not going to be an alphabet soup of esoteric ideas and funny words, but it's going to become real. People have begun to realize that there are certain things that are more efficiently done by technology. So they don't attempt to do it. So that's reserved for completely being taken over by technology. Where the rest is, they have begun to expect the process to deliver far more granularity, interconnectedness, making sure that alerts happen before things go wrong. There's no point in trying to correct something. It's
Absolutely.
always better to prevent rather than try and correct. So all of this intelligence and therefore analytics. Now, it's not important to analyze only your internal situation. It is perhaps more important to analyze what is happening in the periphery of your customers. So again, let me go back to the restaurant idea. So what I mentioned to them, to this group of restaurants, is that track now every building from which one of your loyal customers came to your restaurant in the last 3 years and figure out why the rest of the tenants or the occupants of that building wouldn't want to experience the same delight that your customer. So make him a net promoter of your restaurant so that the idea is that if your neighbor comes and tell you that you had a great experience and therefore go there, you're more likely to listen. And this is the kind of analytics of the external community, of the external world outside your customers, but which are linked to them in certain ways. You find that, and you will be in a position to make sure that you can influence their ability to come into your framework. So, this is the kind of opening out of mind to technology that is now happening. And because people have experienced in these 3 months the phenomenal delivery of technology to them, just the fact that we are able to talk like this is amazing.
Yeah.
That is what has really turned people into absolute ambassadors for technology to support human effort.
I think you really picked on the most important issue in terms of the alphabets which are being used today, especially in a company like ours. So, what really excites most of us when we are walking through the corridors, either in a work from home mode or within the office, is the excitement and joy of making a difference to solve today's problem
Absolutely.
using artificial
Totally.
intelligence. And And what rightfully we have done is exactly as you were saying, that using machine learning as well as AI algorithms, we can automate the process of looking through who has walked in, not following social distancing, not compliant with respect to wearing a mask, also even allocation of space where they are going to work, whether or not that's being done using the constraints driven by the compliance. So, for instance, today
Absolutely.
in Mumbai, compliance came in that you could start with 10% of the workforce. Some some of the states have 33% and somewhere something else. So even putting those constraints, including defining where a set of people would be working together because they are part of the same group or part of the same function, so that there is least discomfort in terms of what the deliverables are. So all those
Absolutely.
be driven by the engine behind, including the cost optimization, because you could actually link up using IoT devices to switch on the air conditioning load, to switch on the electricity load and likes of those. Because when you are working with much smaller number, prudence is not to let money burn.
Variabilize that cost as well.
Absolutely. So your word on variabilizing the cost as well. So we have actually done that with some of our clients globally. And now it is, I call it innovation is the other word which you use. So I'm calling it innovation on the verge, where two sides of the verge meet each other. And that creates a scenario of temporary monopoly, and which is where we would believe that we'll be able to add significant value to our clients when they are
Absolutely.
opening up because of the
Absolutely.
stuff what we have done. So going
Absolutely.
forward, I know that while you are sitting on the boards of many companies, the current scenario of work from home has also resulted in significant uh, scenarios with respect to cyber security issues. And we are actually engaged with a bunch of our prospective clients where we saw that the shield got compromised primarily because the speed at which work from home diktat came, organizations did not have the time to provide either the employees security hardened devices which they were using, or more than that, bringing in the culture to be vigilant on how malware enters any network. So, from your perspective, how do you see the readiness of the various organizations who are looking at this? And where do you believe that maybe uh, AI and machine learning based algorithms could come in very handy to prevent over and above, let's say, all the devices which people put in? I'm referring to not just the firewalls of the world, but with so many devices on, yet you need to have a single, what I call, dashboard to look through and take action on a proactive basis, not post-mortem.
Correct. Now, Sudipto, extraordinary framing of the issues you have done. It gives me the opportunity to share with this wonderful audience you have put together the experience of two extraordinary companies which live by cybersecurity. One is NSDL e-governance, which is in the business of e-governance. And for them, the most important thing in the world is to keep all their interactions with the world cyber secure. Everything is done on the internet. And therefore, it's critical that cybersecurity is at a heightened level, no matter what the external circumstances. So it is very critical for boards and all of us to realize that it is not something that you can do when a crisis happens. You have to believe in all the things that you mentioned upfront and on a continuous basis. So you need to have huge effort being made to document processes, to identify incidents, to have a protocol for making sure that that incident is gone into in terms of its root causes deeply. No lip service to even an attempted breach of the security system that you have set up. A complete appreciation of the sources from which the breaches are coming, the preventive actions that are happening, the behavior of people. How is that symbolized by their use of email or their use of a device or their attempt to enter into spaces or uh, territories which they are not open to? The whole idea of empowering people with security, identity, matching it, making sure that everything that happens is what is permitted. And if there is any attempt to stray from that permission, very quick response, very quick sharing, communication, and redressal through everything, software, hardware, change process, make sure that people are corrected. Don't allow the situation to go wrong. And if it goes wrong, God forbid, make sure you know exactly the drill. Who should be contacted? What should be done? What are the 10 steps that need to be taken to get back to the Fort Knox that you must have? I'm now describing to you the mindset of NSDL e-governance. We are so paranoid about security that we will not allow an incident to happen. And God forbid I've been on the board for over 10 years or 7 years or whatever. And I don't remember a single situation where I've been woken up as audit committee chairman that, oh, there has been a breach and what do we do next? There are drills which are ingrained and which are very much there at work. So when the work from home happened, we had the protocols ready to make sure that people had devices. Our encryption was in place. Our pipes were secure. Our tracking and our instruments to make sure that we knew what incidents were happening were all alive and active and all worked. And through this period, we had a flawless, seamless movement from physical work to work from home and back again. So that's the story of NSDL. Similar story is of Larsen and Toubro Finance Holdings. We pride ourselves there to be a digital NBFC. And the whole idea of a digital NBFC is that you should be able to work even with a rural customer using the payment mechanisms that have been now set up as an infrastructure, the UPI. I can share with you an incident. I was in a rural area and this woman picks out or rummages through her handbag and picks out a smartphone and says, I use Google Pay. It is astonishing as to how much, when people come to know of the possibility of owning a device and the possibility of doing a digital transaction, how quickly they adapt to it and how quickly you can transform the whole interaction to digital. So everything which tries to make, or every incident which tries to make an excuse for not going digital is just that, an excuse. It requires extremely little training, very, very little bit of communication in the language that somebody understands. And if you do that, you have fantastic adaptation. And I've seen it personally. And therefore, I'm saying that there are today no excuses to turning digital, to making sure that you remain safe in your transactions, that you're dealing, the biggest frauds are frauds which arise because identity is not established. Now, if you have your systems and processes which are always looking for and tracking the potential of a wrong usage of identity, you are killing the chance of 99% of the frauds happening. Then it's all a matter of process and validation and cross checks and analytics and being vigilant and all the rest of it. So,
Absolutely.
so this is a new world.
Absolutely. And, we have engaged with quite a few of the general insurance companies where in their journey of using digital technology in order to, for instance, reduce the time taken to settle a claim, especially in the auto sector. One of the biggest pain point for most of us is, should we have a claim? Everybody wants the claim to be settled quickly so that in India we do not get a alternative car as it comes elsewhere in the world. So we remain discomforted when the car has gone for repairs. So what we are doing, using again the digital technology and the smartphone, one can take the picture of the damage
Yeah,
and without going through the earlier process of a agent going in there, inspecting and taking their own sweet time in order to process that, it actually gets done within a jiffy as compared to what it was happening earlier.
absolutely.
And to address the issue of fraud, that also gets taken care of because you know uh, using the underpinning technology, you can always make sure that there is no chance of any morphing or any such thing which is possible with the images
Absolutely.
because it's
Absolutely.
happening real time. So good. So one thing which is coming out loud and clear that some of the organizations were ahead of the curve to adopt digital and analytics in terms of their key processes. So as I'm coming to the time which I'm looking at, any messaging which you would like to give uh, to our audience today, that what are the three things which they should really be focusing on so that when we open up, we use the current scenario more as an opportunity rather than, oh my God, what it has done to us.
So the first thing I would say is treat the unorganized sector of India, which constitutes 90% of all work done in this country. 90%. Treat them as your partners. Pay them on time. Adapt them. Bring them to your table. Bring them into the digital world. Hold hands with them. Make sure that you extend your goodwill to your vast supply chain and go down to that last person on the street who's doing an important process which enables you to get the goods that you want on time and of the quality. So that's my first very big thought. Become completely honest about meeting all your obligations on time. Don't try and make excuses. Don't litigate. Don't find means to delay. Very critical. Number three, get onto the exponential curve. You must now think of how can you really become exponential by use of technology. Embrace it. Bring it in. And make sure that your people, your customer experience, your experience with the value chain, all of that gets enhanced to a degree that you have not experienced before. That is the big opportunity. If you can adopt technology which is available today, you just need to find, you scratch a little and you'll find a TPG who will do everything that you dream of, and whoever else that you want, you will get them. And it's critical to find that, put it together, commit to it, and make sure that you focus only on implementation and building a resilient, bulletproof, top class balance sheet and extremely high quality governance. If you have that, then you're ready for the next Black Swan event.
Thank you very much, Salesh, for very profound thoughts, and the way you have shared some wonderful examples out of what's going on in the industry in various organizations proves the point that we as an organization in TCG Digital, we have a huge opportunity in front of us to contribute by ensuring that our clients get those digital interventions which can make them to perform with trust, the word which you use, to bring out all the goodnesses in terms of supply chain, the products, including customer sat, to a different level. So on that note, all I would like to tell our participants that from our side, we do have quite a few of the things which probably are in place in order to help you take full advantage of the situation to go bold on using digital and take calls, which will help you to become more resilient, help you to become more impactful, help you to tide over this crisis and come out as a winner in the future. So to know more about that, do visit our website, which is tcgdigital.com. On that note, may I now throw the event open for question answers, and we'll be happy to take on the questions, as many as we can, within the time that we have today.
Thank you, Mr. Haribhakti and Mr. Sen, for that engaging and insightful discussion. Just before we open the session to the floor for questions, we wanted to run a quick second poll. You guys know the drill. Please do spare a moment and respond. All right, thank you so much for responding. The polls are in. Very pleased, and thank you very much for considering that the event was useful to you and it was relevant. So great. Now we will take some questions. Please feel free to address your questions to either of our speakers, and we'll try to address as many as we can in the remaining time. Okay, I think the first question is coming in. Mr. Haribhakti, this is for you. Uh, how can you ensure better governance practices? Over to you, Mr. Haribhakti.
It takes a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of commitment, but there is also an element of there being a team board which facilitates the creation of that desire to be the best governed enterprise. This has to be a commonly held belief by the entire set of people who are on the board. I've always seen that where the team is has got common objectives and the leader is in a position to co-elevate rather than dominate, that the whole idea of getting better governance actually gets into place. Just the asking of the poll that you just participated in. I do that after every meeting to make sure what can be done as a takeaway to make the next meeting better. So even the governance process has to be put on this continuous improvement cycle. Everything in life should be made into that kind of a paradigm. If you do that, your governance can dramatically improve. Remember that what you bring to the board table is your moral capital, your competence capital, and your awareness capital. So bring them in full measure to make governance better every meeting.
Thank you, sir. That's very, very insightful. The second question is also actually marked to you. So the second question is, could you elucidate the role of analytics in activity-based costing?
Um, Critical, isn't it? So if you want to know at a very granular unitary level, what is the relationship between value generated and the cost of generating that value at the smallest interaction between the customer and your enterprise? You need analytics. If you don't have the capability to do it with extraordinary software and a very high component of advanced analytics capabilities, including machine learning, you will simply not be able to handle that data volume. And data sets have the amazing ability to pop up and then go away. And if you have not caught them, then they're lost forever. And it is that small little thing that you didn't catch that may make all the difference to your decision making. And when you can array it on a dashboard where you're trying to figure out what is it that in terms of deltas changed or the pattern was not right, then you simply need analytics. You can splice it by time, you can splice it by product, you can splice it by geography. Every which way you want to splice it, you should be able to do it. And to get empowered to do that, you simply need the power of technology.
Thank you very much. I think we have a question now which is aimed to Mr. Sen. I think we may have lost Mr. Sen's link. The question was, do you think COVID-19 environment is right time for innovation? Let me just see if I can get Mr. Sen back online. What we'll do is I think he's having some link problems, so we'll probably try him again in a few moments. Let's take the next question. The next question is, a lot of back to work is to combat current pandemic situation. And the measures that are being taken right now, are these temporary to meet the current task? Or is there a future to these measures beyond the pandemic coming under control? And if so, why? So this is to you, Mr. Haribhakti.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question. Uh, Whoever raised this knows obviously the answer that to get a guaranteed government loan of any amount is not going to last forever. And all these incentives which are today being pushed our way are causing what I may like to describe as absolutely incredible rises in markets without the fundamentals. You are having a world which is likely to degrow. You're having economies which are compressing, and you're having markets which are flying. And this doesn't make sense. It's happening because people realize that there's a lot of money chasing limited goods. And that is what is fueling these phenomenal rises in the price of gold, in the price of equities, all of that. So it's not going to last. And therefore, the faster you reinvent, disrupt, get to technology, make sure that you are ready. As I kept saying through my conversation with you, Prepare yourself today for the next black swan event. We were not prepared this time. That is why the world had to come with bazookas of multi-trillion dollar support to help us revive. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to be easy to keep pumping in this quantum of money into systems all over the country, all over the world. This is not going to repeat itself. And what has happened is not going to continue. So you better learn to get resilient by using your own power, tapping into your ecosystems, empowering them, changing course, getting innovative. To answer briefly the previous question, of course it is the time to innovate. Of course it is the time to rethink and to make sure that you are ready for the next challenge and remain ever ready for whatever challenge comes up.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, thank you for touching upon the earlier question as well, because we still don't seem to have Mr. Sen back online. In fact, one of the things that we've also encountered is that actually innovation is the only solution given the unprecedented situation that we're all in. And if one has to stay abreast of it, then it is best to innovate and find a way out rather than think of what could have been or what should ideally be. Um,
Absolutely.
Having said that, I think we had one more question which has actually come in terms of somewhat related, which says that traditional organizations used to having staff come on site to work. What would be the driving factor to make them adapt to the new normal? Is it an option? In the absence of Mr. Sen, what would your views be, sir?
Well, I think we have discovered the joys of giving people the option to work from home. There are three categories of jobs. Jobs that must be done in a particular physical space. And such jobs are coming down because of VR, AR, IoT, dashboards, automated ability to see and monitor. All the five human attributes that we have, sight, smell, speech, hearing, all of those are getting digitized. And therefore, the range of things which need to be done from a particular physical space is coming down. That is an unmistakable and unstoppable trend. So the sum total of jobs which must be done at a particular physical location is going to fall strategically. It's in strategic decline. And therefore, the option and opportunity to work from wherever you are, not just home. You may have to sometimes, even when you're on a holiday, on a cruise, or wherever you are, you may need to do some work. And that has to be enabled. And that has to be enabled safely through the mechanism that we have learned through this 3 months of working at home. Many people, and I'm one of them, would tell you that we've simply not missed a turn because whatever we needed to know, whatever we needed to use was available. We could process it and send it back. Then there is a second category, which you give an option, and a third category where you actually require people to work from home so that they become natural gig workers. So take the case of restaurants who have to furlough their staff. Now, if they have opportunities to make your dining table their table, and you'll need people to come and serve you. So they will work from their home and temporarily come over to fulfill the requirement of the work that they have to do. So there'll be these three categories: mandatory work from home, optional, and mandatory work from a physical location. That's how I see the new world, the new normal.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much. In fact, it's very true. I think the term work from anywhere is actually become really the new norm, and anywhere can be anywhere. It could be office, it could be a home, it could be outside, it could be a cafe. Doesn't really matter. Thank you very much, sir. I think we're at the end of our time. Thank you, Mr. Haribhakti and Mr. Sen, for an engaging discussion. Thank you, audience, for being a wonderful audience for this evening. And on that note, good evening. Stay safe.
Stay safe.